Welcome to podcast episode 17. We are continuing in on our series about one thing you can do to improve your health today. We are going to go deep down into the world of intermittent fasting. How can reducing the consumption of food that we partake in throughout our day actually increase our lifespan, reduce our risk of illness, improve our mental, physical, and even spiritual health? Join me on this episode. Hey, this is Dr. Monique Adu, a pediatrician turned homeschool mom and keeper of my home. Welcome to my podcast, Sustainable Living for the Family, Health, and Home. In this podcast, we are going to be talking about all things sustainability and always striving to live our best in terms of the life-giving practices that we can do to build longevity and to fulfill our purpose in life. We are going to be talking about things concerning our family, home, gardening, homeschooling, health, nutrition, and so much more. I'm so glad you're here. Now, many of us may have heard about restricting our calories, dieting, decreasing the amount of foods that we eat in order to reduce weight. We oftentimes always hear about the reduction of weight from eating less, but we don't often hear about reducing our food intake just from the simple and free act of fasting or intermittent fasting, meaning you have reduced your food intake at some point in your day. Fasting as a whole means that you would have avoided food consumption for at least a 24-hour period. And normally when this is done, people would go ahead and have some water to make sure that their fluids are at the optimum level. But based on the general definition of fasting, it means you would have avoided eating food for 24 hours. Now, intermittent fasting is on a sub-level of fasting, and it means that you are removing food from your intake for a certain prescribed amount of time. Now, there are many different types of fasting. We won't get into all those specific details, but the gist of this information for today is having you understand what are the tremendous health benefits of a fasting period for our body. One of the most common forms of intermittent fasting is the 16-8, which means you avoid foods for a 16-hour period and then you have a feeding window for 8 hours. This one is the most popular because it's easier to implement in your day, especially if you are working. For example, you could go ahead and just have your breakfast at 9 a.m. in the morning, have your lunch whenever you'd like, let's say around 12 o'clock, and then have your last meal around 5. This would have completed that 8-hour window, and it will give you 16 hours of a fasting period where your body will be undergoing some tremendous changes. Now, it is important to understand that if one is to partake in things such as this, you should think it out thoroughly before beginning this process. Make sure that you are able physically and medically to do this. So make sure you investigate for yourself and even discuss it with your healthcare provider if you need, especially for those that may need to have adequate blood glucose control and other factors that can have a role in the fasting process. Now, what is it that is so special about fasting? The first thing that can come to our minds too when we hear about the word fasting is from biblical times when those that were seeking the Father took a time period of sacrifice where they refrained from eating, whether they were going through something of emotional distress. They were seeking Him for answers, seeking for knowledge, and seeking for wisdom. We do often hear about that fasting period that has occurred in times past for those seeking the Father's will, walking closely with Him, and just taking that time of sacrifice to just focus on the Father and gain information from the Father and His will. So fasting has a very, very strong role to play in our past and in our present time. It is a choice by a follower of Yeshua, by the Father, to fast under certain circumstances if they so see that it is in accordance to their walk in life, and it is just giving of yourself and seeking of the Father, walking with Him. So that is also a personal decision that one may make in deciding whether they would like to fast or not. Now, fast forward to our time where we are learning so much in science about how fasting can literally change our bodies and really give us some renewed health. One thing I wanted to talk about today was a certain protein called sirtuins. Sirtuin proteins have been shown to help with the stressful oxidative processes that occur in our body under cell stress, under conditions of illness, under conditions of inflammation, under aging. It is known to be one of the proteins that can literally help to slow down the process of aging. And these sirtuin proteins are turned up in periods of fasting. Another key component with regard to fasting are stem cells. Now, oftentimes we hear about stem cells in relation to new technologies and new medical treatments and so forth. But stem cells play a large role in our body that help to make sure that we always have a constant supply of regenerative cells. These stem cells are the progenitor cells, meaning they are the father or mother cells that help to produce all the cells in our body. And guess what? Stem cells are renewed and increased in supply. They are increased and pumped out from the bone marrow when we undergo periods of fasting. And third, another remarkable breakthrough has been the discovery of autophagy. Auto meaning self, phagy meaning eat, self-eating. Our cells literally go through a recycling process where in the fasting state, it will take old debris, cells that are dysfunctional. So just think, if someone has a condition and the cells are degraded, the cells are abnormal, the cells are dysfunctional. When one goes through this fasting phase, autophagy is turned on after about a few days into the process, and it cleans up the body. It takes those ill working cells, those deconditioned cells, it literally takes them apart and uses them to renew the cells that we need to bring forth health and proper metabolic function, among many other things. Imagine just refraining from eating can boost our health, reverse the process of aging, and renew the cells that we need to function properly. So fasting should never be considered as something difficult to do or hard to keep up with, especially if you apply it to a rhythm in your life. You go ahead and incorporate it in your daily function, such as the 16-8 fasting schedule that I mentioned earlier. You can easily move your body into all these wonderful, wonderful metabolic processes every single day if you choose. You can move into the production of sirtuins, stem cell regeneration, and autophagy just by simply maneuvering your food intake periods. Now, some may say, how am I going to fast? I'm going to be so hungry. Guess what? There's even more insight about what happens to the body during this state. In the beginning, if you have been eating a highly processed diet, you will have to go through a certain detoxification process, which is necessary to get your body functioning. And during this process, yes, you may feel a little bit more hungry and crave some of those foods that weren't very good for you in the first place. But once you push through that, you will find that you are less hungry than you normally were, and you start to crave the good foods that are healthy for you, predominantly whole food, plant-based foods that are rich in nutrients, not processed and just brimming over with phytochemicals, minerals, vitamins, and so much more to get your body into optimal functioning. You will also find that you have increased energy levels. Many times, those that undergo this fasting process will report to their medical providers, their family members, that they have so much energy versus what they had before going through this process. And I can tell you personally from my experience, as I'm doing this myself, that I definitely have increased energy. I feel so much better. Things are just in a better condition than previous. And of course, when you're intermittently fasting or fasting as a whole, you will see unwanted weight drop. And of course, that is of benefit to move into our ideal body weight for our height and size, shape, and genetic background. So fasting just gives us so many opportunities to increase our lifespan, improve our health, and really, really gain deep awareness and self-control of the way that we function each day, as food can often be a crippling issue for so many people all around the world, causing many, many of our diseases. Food is the source of so much non-communicable disease. So if we can hold in our hands a free tool that helps us to gain strength, health, and wellness, mental strength, sharpness, and longevity, why not grab hold of it? If you are deciding to go ahead and try intermittent fasting, do your research. It's easy to find reputable information. Look at peer-reviewed journals. You can go to places like PubMed, which is oftentimes giving you free journal articles where you can find in-depth information about the science behind these things. Understand why you're doing these things. Make sure that you are counting the cost of it. In other words, what things do you need to bring into your pantry every week? What healthy foods can you get? What can you grow in your garden to support a healthy whole food plant-based diet that will power your body through your new eating methods? Think about intermittent fasting, and I hope that if you do decide to do it, you will gain so much more than you could have ever thought of gaining. And when you do, go ahead and drop a comment below. Let me know how you're doing with it. I encourage you, and I hope that you will gain so much in your health and in your walk. Until next time, do all you can to be more and more sustainable and be blessed. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening and joining me in on this podcast. Please leave a review below so that others can hear about a podcast that you have found value in and enjoy. You can follow me on my website at www.drmoniqueadu.com, as well as my YouTube channel, Sustainable Living for Family, Health, and Home.